Dune Part 2. Utter disappointment. 3 out of 5. I rated Part 1 4.5 out of 5. It was incredibly close to the novel. All the salient, relevant points were there. Nothing was done wrong. Nothing was done stupidly. Nothing was done in a hurry. It was expansive. It was great. It fit the theme of the novel. And I was excited to see Part 2. And my buddy had seen Part 2 before I did. And I asked a couple of questions, and it gave me kind of a bad feeling. And I was like, well, I got some time today. I'm going to go see it. So I went and saw it. What a rushed hack job of a movie. There had better be a director's cut that is 5 hours long that includes the massive time skips and everything else it doesn't make sense. Why is Jessica pregnant the entire time? 5 years time takes place approximately between the end of what happened in Part 1 and the end of Part 2 on the film. There should be about 5 years time. Paul and Chani's first child, Leto, that is murdered by Harkonnens during the attack on Siege Tabra. Saint Alia of the Knife is her name, the sister of Muad'Dib. Saint Alia of the Knife is called Saint Alia of the Knife, not because she's really good with the knife fighting against the dummy, because only Paul witnesses that in Dune Messiah. She is known as Saint Alia of the Knife because she is the one who kills Baron Vladimir Harkonnen and informs everyone of Paul's lineage through Jessica, including as well that Gaius Helen Mohiam, the Reverend Mother Superior of the Bene Gesserit, is Jessica's mother. That crone slept with the Baron and bore Jessica. At least we got to see Margot Fenring for like 5 minutes. There was a whole thing where she left notes for Jessica in the palace at Arrakeen because they had previously occupied it as stewards before the arrival of the Atreides. None of that's in there. The lack of Lady Fenring is kind of, it's really the only thing that is a problem in the first one. Everything else is close enough that it works. And you're talking, my opinion here is as someone who has read the first novel, the one in particular that this film is made from, I want to say 9 times I've read that novel cover to cover. Several of those times were in the process of repeated readings of the entire series from beginning to end and then starting over again. I've read Dune a lot. Things they got right in the second film. Some character traits of Raban and Fade Rautha. Rautha. What is this Rautha? Fade Rautha. Some of these people's accents were slipping in and out too. That bothered me. There was such a lack of finesse on there was no practice. Obviously, they just were reciting lines, and I must have been on a rush budget or something. That's my guess. The movie's long, it should be longer, and as such, it should be cut into 2. That they could do so much with the first one and get so much right, only really missing the one thing. I had no personal issue with Liette Kynes being a woman. It didn't really make a difference. Except, here she is with the poofy ball. Except, Chani is the daughter of Liette. That is part of why she's part of the prophecy. A false voice from the outer world, who is nonetheless a part of the Fremen, bears a child whose name is the Desert Spring. She is the Trinity to Paul's Neo. Sihaya. So, while they accomplished the majority of necessary plot points to fulfill having told the second half of the story in the book, they omitted way too much. They condensed all of these events into within the same time frame of Jessica being pregnant with Alia, which, remember, at the end of the first movie, she's already pregnant, probably 6 or 8 weeks along. From my recollection, having not picked the book up to fact check, this is just going by my numerous readings and what's printed in my memory. Alia is somewhat prematurely born, which means that she's maybe in the womb for about 8 months. That she is born telepathically conscious with her mother, and that as soon as her palate is able to form the slightest syllabic words, her first words are fairly dense and eloquent. And by the time she takes out the Baron at the end of the novel, she's like 4 or 5 years old. And she's already scared the shit out of all the old women. They're like, oh, it's a demon abomination, this old woman and a young girl. It's a child, but she's ancient. And they can't deal with it. Instead, they just have Jessica walking around talking to herself. Paul and Chani have a child. That child is in Sietch Tabra when it is attacked by Harkonnens before Paul has a chance to challenge for the Empire. And in the movie, they've got her still kind of on the, I don't know, man. And she's getting jealous and upset about, the fact that Paul's like, but, he's like, you'll always be mine as long as I breathe. And then he's like, I'll marry her, this freaking princess. In the book, this is all explained, and Chani is on board. She's not 100% on board, but she's on board. And Jessica has a whole thing she talks about, like, history will call us mothers, but the people here call us, or whatever, something about that, will call us concubines, and others will know us as mothers. None of that. And the fight with Fade, I don't seem to recall Paul taking knives into himself in order to kill Fade. And also, where is Thufir Hawat? It seems to me, I think he plays a part in Dune Messiah, but I thought maybe he was present at the very tail end there. Well, I think it's hilarious that they picked Christopher Walken to play the Emperor. I don't think it was a good choice. He plays kind of a buffoon, an out-of-touch aristocrat, basically, while at the same time, the Emperor was the one who allowed the Baron to think that he was, going to get this whole, spice set up and whatever, and his revenge, while the Baron knew that the Emperor thought he was playing him and had his own plans within plans, so that the Emperor's plans could have plans within plans, plans within plans within plans, which was never mentioned. Yes, the Emperor said the thing and he did whatever, and he had an issue with. The real issue in the book that the Emperor had with the Atreides was that they were too popular among the other royal houses. And that if Duke Leto, with his popularity, should happen to decide to vie for power in the Empire, many of the other houses would follow suit unless he could find ways to control them using Chom, which is never mentioned, the Combine Harnett Oberarchen Mercantile Company. Oberharnett. No, Combine Harnett over. That's one that's escaped me. The point is, they don't mention anything about Chom. They barely mention the Spacing Guild. They don't mention anything about at least the Bene Gesserit are in it. But the breeding programs, the other families, like there could have just been some offhand conversations, some expositions here and there that would have, been able to fit all of that in. So for all of the expansive visual interpretation and mostly keeping it to script in the first one, the second one had a lot of things that I'm pretty sure were taken directly out of the book. But at the same time, the alteration of events makes some of this stuff not make sense. So now they're talking about they're going to start production on Dune Messiah, but they've got to come up with a script, and the director is tired and wants to take a break. I don't know if it's going to be made. If it's going to be made, I don't know if it's going to be good. And that sucks. But we got Dune Part 1, which doesn't suck. Just so many scenes that to have the big expansive vistas of the places and everything, like to justify the special effects budget, but they weren't like Giedi Prime. I'm not sure that any of that is in the book as being described as a purely black and white place. Also, the Harkonnens have red hair. Everybody there was bald. They could have had montages to cover the time skip. The point that Paul and Chani have a 1-year-old son. Paul has no issue believing in himself. The movie makes this whole emotional journey thing. And having the girlfriend that's not sure and all this, it's just a whole bunch of emotional tension to make it seem like there's any of that there. And guess what? In the story, there's none of that there. They fall in love. They are a perfect match. They have a child. That child dies. A few years later, she becomes pregnant again. And it's around the time as the end of the book. Because then the children at Dune Messiah are born. And by the end of Dune Messiah, Alia is an adult. At least old enough to marry Duncan. No, come to think of it, I think Chani becomes pregnant with the twins in between books, between Dune and Dune Messiah. But there's a time skip. It takes her a while to grieve the loss. They don't even show it. It's not in the freaking movie. For the Dune movie, this is not canon. Half of the motivation of what they did, or the fact that there's a cave where they found the atomics, ends up being the place where Paul puts his father's literal skull in a shrine. The fact that Paul just gets the water of life and goes out and sits and takes it and doesn't tell anyone. Some of it, I think, on the second one was just needless Star Warsing of the film. And I know that's ironic and goofy because Star Wars was directly influenced by Dune. But in all the places where Star Wars differs from Dune, is like where they made this differ from Dune. And it's called Dune. It's Dune. It should have been Dune. The problem is, for one, I think the middle section would have been kind of slow. There would have been no major conflict or battle other than the death of Paul's son at the attack on Siege Tabra. And I think at that point would have been the end of part 2. And then wait for part 3. And part 3 is the total Fremen revolt, overthrow of the Harkonnen, the bringing of the Emperor to his knees, and all of the other royal houses saying, we will back you as Emperor. As long as, whatever. And then all the ones that won't are the ones that get attacked by the jihad. Paul specifically goes after everyone that says they will back him, but he knows from his visions that they will betray him. This takes place in between Dune and Dune Messiah. And it isn't nuking the spice fields. It is dumping the connaughts of water that the Fremen have onto the nearby pre-spice masses, causing a chain reaction that goes all the way down to the center of the planet that causes every worm to die, that causes all of the spice to cease to be. And he who controls the spice controls the universe, and one's ability to destroy a thing is the supreme ability to control it. This is outlined in the book. They briefly gloss over this in the film, and they completely get wrong how they're going to do it. They don't even want to bother explaining the spice cycle. It is so rushed. Paul sees the spice cycle in a crucial vision in the story of the book. It's a scene that should have been. That's what I got. I'm done. I'm going to have to see it again to see if I missed a few things. But honestly, really, the second half of Dune by Denis Villeneuve is David Lynch Dune Part 2, as far as I'm concerned. 3 out of 5.